Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today we're going to talk about Mahler's Symphony number 5. Now, the 5th is Mahler's longest symphony. Yes, not in terms of duration, but in terms of number of bars. And the reason, of course, is because of the scherzo, that middle movement, which is in 3/4 time, a quick 3/4 for the most part in the last 20 minutes. So when you have 20 minutes of 3/4, you wind up with lots and lots of bars. And it says something about the piece. You know, when Mahler wrote the 5th originally, he was very unhappy with the way it sounded, and he later rescored it entirely, almost entirely. He went over everything really, really carefully. And that's the version we know today. Of course, that was not his last word, because Mahler never really finished anything, but that was just the latest update, the latest version of it. And it really was a piece that required a different technique, because the emphasis throughout is on polyphony, first of all. And so Mahler wanted to have absolute clarity of part writing and texture. And second of all, he gives an unprecedented amount of work to the string section. Before, his symphonies were really based on the sonorities of woodwinds and brass, and of course strings, yes, to play like lyrical tunes, but not in the same way, not with that constant polyphonic writing that he has in the 5th Symphony. It's a very difficult symphony to do. Of all the Mahler symphonies, I think the 5th has the most bad performances. It really does. It's a wonderful structure. You know, it's a beautiful 5-movement, almost, Bartokian arch form, which is going to be even more arch-like in the 7th Symphony. But it really is. It's beautiful formally. It has quite simply the greatest, the biggest, the most substantive scherzo of any symphony. I mean, there isn't another one that has, or another one that we play or care about, that has a more meaningful scherzo that is the fulcrum of the whole symphony than this one with its fabulous solo horn, the concertante horn. It's just marvelous. And then, of course, there's the adagietto, that beautiful adagietto. And you have these outer movements, 2 pairs of outer movements, both of which go slow, fast. And the slow one it gives some of its thematic material to the quick one, even though they're sort of separate movements, although they're attached. You play them run on, and they're not introductions. They're completely independent movements that run on to the quick ones, but they share thematic material. And that just makes, and then of course there's a chorale in the second movement that comes back at the end. There's cyclical form, and it's like, oh, I'm going to, it's endlessly interesting. It really is. And usually dismally performed. I think it is a very exhausting piece. It really is, especially for the strings, but also for the brass. It has a large brass section and a relatively, for Mahler, smaller proportionally wind section. And so it's just a completely unique piece with its own sound world and its own technical requirements. I mean, it's interesting, Karajan, when he recorded his, required something like 50 rehearsals before he would actually make the recording. And it shows. It's a fabulous recording. However, my performance of choice is this one, James Levine with the Philadelphia Orchestra. This is one of the great Mahler recordings anybody ever made. Levine was, he didn't complete his Mahler cycle, although you can dig around and find some live things that he did to finish it off. But it was on the way to being one of the great ones. It really was. And he did it principally, we did it with 3 orchestras, the London Symphony, the Chicago Symphony, and Philadelphia. And he had Philadelphia for 5 and 9, and the complete Derek Cook 10th, which was another thing. But the 5 and 9 are absolutely 2 of the greatest Mahler performances out there, not least because it gave Philadelphia an opportunity to really strut its stuff, and because Levine at this point in his career was kind of like a George Sell clone, a conductor of extreme discipline and tension, and he really got him to play. And they have all the virtuosity the music requires, but the performance itself, the interpretation is really sharp and really focused and really exciting and rhythmic and also transparent. It's just splendid, and it hits all the big moments really, really, really well. And, there are other fifths that I think are splendid. The Carillon is magnificent, of course. The first Schulte is very good. The second Bernstein is very good, not the first one. I've done a talk on Mahler's fifth. You can go and you can see the whole list. The Marcus Stentz from Melbourne is fabulous. There's a bunch that are really worth listening to. But on the whole, it's a symphony that has a lot of misses. Many, many more misses than hits. And so it was just really salutary when this came out, and it was so great. They play it as if it's not going to be difficult to be great, and that makes me very happy, very, very happy. So this is my Mahler fifth of choice. It's my fave, at least this week. Who knows? Who knows what could happen? But it's amazing how well it's held up. It's really held up well. It's on RCA, and it's just terrific. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.